I started thinking about it the first half an hour in the clinic, and I thought, I want to finish this book before I die. I was literally afraid, because I didn't know much about dialysis, which I'm still undergoing. I'm going to die within a few weeks. I want to finish this book. This will be what I can contribute to anybody here who doesn't know what I suffered, what my people have suffered, and still suffering. And I began writing during the clinic. I will not get involved in conversation with anyone. And the doctor there and the nurses thought, well, this is good therapy for him. I said, hey, listen, I'm not writing this for therapy, for me. I am writing this to finish a project that I hope I can contribute to people. You know, this is the reason I'm writing it. And I finished it, thank God, during dialysis. And it uplifted my spirit while I'm doing it. Every day I finish a few pages, I go home, I put them in the computer, and it made me feel so much better that I was anxious to go to the clinic 2 days later. So I think it uplifted the spirit of many of the patients there when they knew what I was doing, because the nurses would tell them, don't bother him, he's writing, don't bother him, he's a writer, he's writing, you know. So this is, we hope that people would read that and it would uplift their spirits, whatever they are going through. We hope that they can be optimistic about life and maybe need a little fear of dying soon to finish the projects they should be working on, you know.
Well, back to your question about legacy, and you know, I think as writer, I always felt the legacy of a reader, you know, because I love to read so much, and even as a child being an obsessive reader, that part of the ongoing family is, you know, reader to writer to reader to writer, and if you love to read, then why not share your work, because you're just passing it on to a potential other reader who's a human being like you. But at this point in my life, I'm really interested in issues of disconnection and connection, and how many families, like even local families who don't have any overseas immigration issues at stake, who don't have any kind of legacies of injustice in their people's history, although maybe all people have that. How many families have a kind of essential disconnection within them, and how much reading can or can't help, or reading other stories like your story, how much that can help you understand your own story. One of my favorite quotes was a few years ago, I was doing a workshop with teachers in Canada, and this teacher at the end of the day, who hadn't spoken all day, she'd been very discreet in the corner, she suddenly raised her hand and wanted to read. And she came forward, and this is just a paraphrase, because I never got a copy of the poem, because after she said this, she left the room and none of us saw her again. We couldn't even thank her. But basically what she said was, I always looked down on the Arabs and the Jews. And she didn't seem like she was either Arab or Jewish, but she said, I always looked down on the Arabs and the Jews. I thought, why can't they get their act together? Why can't they make peace? Why can't they figure out a way for understanding? But then I experienced the most contentious divorce in the history of Canada. And I had to ask myself, why can't I get it together with the one person I know best in the world? But I couldn't. So, and then there was some more of the poem, but it ended with, so I will never again look down on the Arabs and the Jews. And she ran out of that place, and I looked around, and everybody who'd been in there all day, we were exhausted, was weeping. And there was this sense of, what an honest disclosure. And then we got in a great conversation at the end of the day just about issues of, well, what are we all doing here anyway? We're writing because we want to connect to things that matter to us. Here she was able to stand up, a shy person, stand up and read this, something very deep from her heart, and very connected to things we can continue to think about in the world. How many of us, I just asked out of curiosity, how many of us have people we don't speak to in our own families? Every hand went up. Every single person had someone. And so that the day kind of ending with, well, part of our jobs as teachers, as writers, as believers in language, is to keep trying to communicate with the people who don't necessarily want to hear from us, or who aren't expecting to hear from us. And, you know, I think as a writer, you know, there is that sense in families that we can pass on things that we share that make us feel connected, but we're also always working with very basic issues of disconnection and how may we use the tool, the vehicle of writing to make some bridge, wherever it might be. I mean, I've been working in schools so long that I am a 1,000% believer in how much this simple act of writing can help people of any age, people with any level of, you know, experience, connect to things which matter to them. So, anyway.
Aziz, I'm wondering if, before we finish, you could read us a passage from your book.
Of course.
We can kind of bookend our times with
Of course.
Shihab readings.
All right. After I came to the United States, Mother took care of the Lakwa. That's my piece of land there. She told me this every morning during all my visits. To convince me not to sell it, she said she would walk the 3 miles to the land and make sure the olive, almond, and fig trees were watered and the weeds were pulled out. At the end of the day, she would collect dry, dead tree branches, carry them home on her head in bundles, and store them in the basement for winter's fires. She dreamed that someday I would return to live in the village and would build myself a stone house on the hilltop land. She said, quote, people would ask me every day why I was working so hard on that land, and I would tell them that I was taking care of it for you. I was so proud of it. I would talk to every blade of grass. I would talk to the trees and even the rocks and to the dirt and tell them about you, how you went so far away from your own people and how someday you would come back and live with us right here. I told the land and all its inhabitants, the worms and the rabbits, the birds and the snakes, never to forget you. Mother would often bring tears to my eyes when she would ask pathetically, have you forgotten us, son? Have you forgotten your land? Have you forgotten our good-smelling air and our pretty red poppies?
Beautiful. And it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. That's a poem.
Yes, it's a poem.
I think it's a poem.